Hey, it's me, Milo. I know it's a little loud in here. I'm sorry about that. We're back for day two. We're going to be, hitting legs today, not upper. Um, but unlike last time, you're not going to be hearing me talk. Over this whole video, there's going to be a voiceover of me reading The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. So enjoy that.
Introduction. I have been many years training in the way of strategy, called Ni Ten Ichi Ryu, and now I think I will explain it in writing for the first time. It is now during the first 10 days of the 10th month in the 20th year of Kanai, 1645. I have climbed Mountain Iwatso of Higo in Kyushu to pay homage to heaven and pray to Kwannon and kneel before Buddha. I am a warrior of Harima Province. Shinmen Musashi no Kami Fujiwara no Genshin. Age 60 years. From youth, my heart has been inclined towards the way of strategy. My first duel was when I was 13. I struck down a strategist of the Shinto school, one Arima Kihei. When I was 16, I struck down an able strategist, Karashima Akiyama. When I was 21, I went up against the capital and went through all manner of strategists, never once failing to win in many contests. After that, I went from province to province, dueling with strategists of various schools, and not once to win, even though I had as many as 60 encounters. This was because between the ages of 13 and 28 and 29, when I reached 30, I looked back on my past. The previous victories were not due to my having mastered strategy. Perhaps it was ability, or the order of heaven, or that other school strategy was inferior. After that, I studied morning and evening, searching for the principle, and came to realize the way of strategy when I was 50. Since then, I have lived without following any particular way. Thus, with virtue of strategy, I practice many arts and abilities, all things with no teacher. To write this book, I did not use the law of the Buddha or the teachings of Confucius, nor Old War chronicles, nor books on martial tactics. I take up my brush to explain the true spirit of this Ichi school, as it is mirrored in the way of heaven and Kwannon. The time is the night on the 10th day of the 10th month, at the hour of the tiger. Chapter 1. The Ground Book. Strategy is the craft of the warrior. Commanders must enact the craft, and troopers should know this way. There is no warrior in the world today who really understands the way of strategy. There are various ways. There is the way of salvation by the law of Buddha, the way of Confucius governing the way of learning, the way of healing as a doctor, as a poet teaching the way of waka, tea, archery, and many arts and skills. Each man practices as he feels inclined. It is said the warrior's is the twofold way of the pen and sword, and he should have a taste for both ways. Even if a man has no natural ability, he can be a warrior by sticking assiduously to both divisions of the way. Generally speaking, the way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death, although not only warriors but priests, women, peasants, and lowlier folk have been known to die readily in the cause of duty or out of shame. This is a different thing. The warrior is different in that studying the way of strategy is based on overcoming men. By victory gained in crossing swords with individuals or in joining the battle with large numbers, we can attain power and fame for ourselves or our lord. This is the virtue of strategy. the way of strategy. In China and Japan, practitioners of the way have been known as masters of strategy. Warriors must learn this way. Recently, there have been people getting on in the world as strategists, but they are usually just sword fencers. The attendants of the Kashimakantori shrines of the province of Hitachi received instructions from the god and made schools based on this teaching, traveling from country to country instructing men. This is the recent meaning of strategy. In olden times, strategy was listed among the 10 abilities and 7 arts as a beneficial practice. It was certainly an art, but as a beneficial practice, it was not limited to the sword fencing. The true value of sword fencing cannot be seen within the confines of sword fencing technique. If we look at the world, we see arts for sale. Men use equipment to sell their own selves, as if with the nut and the nut has become less than the flower. In this kind of way of strategy, both are those teaching and those learning the way are concerned with coloring and showing off their technique, trying to hasten the bloom of the flower. They speak of this dojo or that dojo. They are looking for profit. Someone once said, immature strategy is the cause of grief. That was a true saying. There are 4 ways in which men pass through life: as gentlemen, farmers, artisans, and merchants. The way of the farmer, using agricultural instruments, he sees springs through to autumns with an eye on the changes of the seasons. Second is the way of the merchant. The winemaker obtains his ingredients and puts them to use to make his living. The way of the merchant is to always to live by taking profit. This is the way of the merchant. Thirdly, the gentleman warrior, carrying weaponry of his way. The way of the warrior is to match you the virtue of his ways. If a gentleman dislikes strategy, he will not appreciate the benefit of weaponry. So, must he not have a little taste for this? Fourthly, the way of the artisan. The way of the carpenter is to become proficient in the use of his tools. First, to lay his plans with a true measure and then perform his work according to the plan. Thus, he passes through life. These are the 4 ways of the gentleman, the farmer, the artisan, and the merchant. Comparing the way of the carpenter to strategy. The comparison with carpentry is through the connection with houses: houses of nobility, houses of warriors, the 4 houses, ruin of houses, thriving of houses, the style of the house, the tradition of the house, and the name of the house. The carpenter uses a master plan of the building, and the way of strategy is similar in that there is a plan of campaign. If you want to learn the craft of war, ponder over this book. The teacher is as a needle, the disciple is as thread. You must practice constantly. Like the foreman carpenter, the commander must know natural rules, and the rules of country, and the rules of houses. This is the way of the foreman. The foreman carpenter must know the architectural theory of towers and temples, and the plans of palaces, and must employ men to raise up houses. The way of the foreman carpenter is the same as the way of the commander of a warrior house. In the construction of houses, choice of woods is made. Straight, unknotted timber of good appearance is used for the revealed pillars. Straight timber with small defects is used for the inner pillars. Timbers of the finest appearance, even if a little weak, is used for the thresholds, lintels, doors, sliding doors, and so on. Good, strong timber, though it be gnarled and knotted, can always be used as street glue in construction. Timber which is weak or knotted throughout should be used as scaffolding, and later for firewood. The foreman carpenter allots his men to work according to their ability. Floor layers, makers of sliding doors, thresholds and lintels, ceilings, and so on. Those of poor ability lay the floor joists, and those of lesser ability carve wedges and do such miscellaneous work. If the foreman knows and deploys his men well, the finished work will be good. The foreman should take into account the abilities and limitations of his men, circulating among them and asking nothing unreasonable. He should know their morale and spirit, encourage them when necessary. This is the same as the principle of strategy. The way of strategy. Like a trooper, the carpenter sharpens his own tools. He carries his equipment in under his toolbox, and he works under the direction of his foreman. He makes columns and girders with axe, shapes floorboards and shelves with a plane, cuts fine openwork and carvings accurately, giving as excellent a finish as his skill will allow. This is the craft of the carpenters. When the carpenter becomes skilled and understands measures, he can become a foreman. The carpenter's attainment is having tools which will cut well, to make small shrines, writing shelves, tables, paper lanterns, chopping boards, and pot lids. These are the specialties of a carpenter. Things are similar for the trooper. You ought to think deeply about this. The attainment of the carpenter is that his work is not warped, that the joints are not misaligned, and that the work is truly plain, so that it meets well and is not merely finished in sections. This is essential. If you want to learn this way, deeply consider the things written in this book one at a time. You must do sufficient research. The Way is shown as five books concerning different aspects. These are ground, water, wind, and void. The body of the Way of Strategy, from the viewpoint of my Ichi school, is explained in the ground book. It is difficult to realize the true way just through sword fencing. Know the smallest things and the biggest things, the shallowest things and the deepest things, as if it were a straight road mapped out on the ground. The first book is called the Ground Book. Second is the Water Book. With water as basis, the spirit becomes like water. Water adopts the shape of its receptacle. It is sometimes a trickle and sometimes a wild sea. Water has a clear blue color. By the clarity, things of each school are shown in this book. If you master the principles of sword fencing, when you freely beat one man, you beat any man in the world. The spirit of defeating a man is the same for 10 million men. The strategists make small things into big things, like building a great Buddha from 1 foot water. I cannot write in detail how this is done. The principle of strategy is having one thing, to know 10,000 things. Things of each school are written in this one book. Third is the Fire Book. This book is about fighting. The spirit of fire is fierce, whether the fire be small or big, and so it is with battles. The way of battles is the same for man to man fights, and for 10,000 aside battles. You must appreciate that spirit can become big or small. What is big is easy to perceive, what is small is difficult to perceive. In short, it is difficult for large numbers of men to change position, so their movements can easily be predicted. An individual can easily change his mind, so his movements are difficult to predict. You must appreciate this. The essence of this book is that you must train day and night in order to make quick decisions. In strategy, it is necessary to treat training as part of normal life, with your spirit unchanging. Thus, Combat in battle is described in the Fire Book. Fourthly, the Wind Book. This book is not concerned with my Ichi school, but with other schools of strategy. By wind, I mean old traditions, present day traditions, and family traditions of strategy. Thus, I clearly explain the strategies of the world. This is tradition. It is difficult to know yourself if you do not know others. To always, there are sidetracks. If you study a way daily, your spirit diverges, and you may think you are obeying a good way, but objectively, it is not the true way. If you are following the true way and diverge a little, this will later become a large divergence. You must realize this. Other strategies have come to be thought of as mere sword fencing, and it is not unreasonable that this should be so. The benefits of my strategy, although it includes sword fencing, lies in a separate principle. I have explained what is commonly meant by strategy in other schools in the Wind Book. Fifthly, the Book of the Void. By void, I mean that which has no beginning and no end. Attaining this principle means not attaining the principle. The way of strategy is the way of nature. When you appreciate the power of nature, knowing rhythm of any situation, you will be able to hit the enemy naturally and strike naturally. All this is the way of the void. I intend to show how to follow the true way according to nature in the Book of Void. Warriors, both commanders and troopers, carry two swords at their belt. In olden times, these were called the long sword and the sword. Nowadays, they are known as the sword and the companion sword. Let it suffice to say that in our land, whatever the reason, a warrior carries two swords in his belt. It is the way of the warrior. Mito Ichi Ryu shows the advantages of using both swords. The spear and the halberd are weapons which are carried out of doors. Students of the Ichimiki school way of strategy should train from the start with the sword and the long sword in either hand. This is a truth. When you sacrifice your life, you must make the fullest use of your weaponry. It is false not to do so, and to die with a weapon yet undrawn. If you hold a sword with both hands, it is difficult to wield it freely to left and right, so my method is to carry the sword in one hand. This does not apply to large weapons such as a spear or halberd, but swords and companion swords can be carried in one hand. It is encumbering to hold a sword in both hands when you are on horseback, when running on uneven roads, on swampy ground, muddy rice fields, stony ground, or in a crowd of people. To hold the long sword in both hands is not the true way, for if you carry a bow or a spear or other arms in your left hand, you have only one hand free for the long sword. However, when it is difficult to cut an enemy down with one hand, you must use both hands. It is not difficult to wield a sword in one hand. The way to learn this is to train with two long swords, one in each hand. It will seem difficult at first, but everything is difficult at first. Bows are difficult to draw, halberds are difficult to wield. As you become accustomed to the bow, so your pull will become stronger. When you become used to wielding the long sword, you will gain the power of the way and wield the sword well. As I will explain in the second book, the Water Book, there is no fast way of wielding the long sword. The long sword should be wielded broadly and the companion sword closely. This is the first thing to realize. According to this Ichi school, you can win with a long weapon, yet you can also win with a short weapon. In short, the way of the Ichi school is the spirit of winning, whatever the weapon and whatever its size. It is better to use two swords rather than one when you are fighting a crowd, especially if you want to take a prisoner. These things cannot be explained in detail. From one thing, know 10,000 things. When you attain the way of strategy, there will not be one thing you cannot see. You must study hard. Masters of the longsword are called strategists. As for the other military arts, those who master the bow are called archers. Those who master the spear are called spearmen. Those who master the gun are called marksmen. Those who master the halberd are called halberdiers. But we do not call masters of the way of the longswordsmen, nor do we speak of companion swordsmen, because bows, guns, spears, and halberds are all warriors' equipment. That they certainly are part of strategy. To master the virtue of the longsword is to govern the world and oneself. Thus, the longsword is the basis of strategy. The principle is strategy by means of the longsword. If he attains the virtue of the longsword, one man can beat 10 men. Just as one man can beat 10, so 100 men can beat 1,000, and 1,000 can beat 10,000. In my strategy, one man is the same as 10,000, so this strategy is the complete warrior's craft. The way of the warrior does not include other ways, such as Confucianism, Buddhism, certain traditions, artistic accomplishments, and dancing. But even though these are not parts of the way, if you know the way broadly, then you will see it in everything. Men must polish their particular way. There is a time and place for use of weapons. The best use of the companion sword is in a confined space, or when you are engaged closely with an opponent. The long sword can be used effectively in all situations. The halberd is inferior to the spear on the battlefield. With the spear, you can take the initiative. The halberd is defensive. In the hands of one of two men of equal ability, the spear gives a little extra strength. Spear and halberd both have their uses, but neither is very beneficial in confined spaces. They cannot be used for taking a prisoner. They are essentially weapons for the field. Anyway, if you learn indoor techniques, then you will think narrowly and forget the true way. Thus, you will have difficulty in actual encounters. The bow is tactically strong at the commencement of battle, especially battles on a moor, as it is possible to shoot quickly from among the spearmen. However, it is unsatisfactory in sieges, or the enemy is more than 40 yards away. For this reason, there are nowadays few traditional schools of archery. There is little use nowadays for this kind of skill. From inside fortifications, the gun has no equal among weapons. It is the supreme weapon on the field before the ranks clash. But once swords are crossed, the gun becomes useless. One of the virtues of the bow is that you can see the arrows in flight and correct your aim accordingly, whereas a gunshot cannot be seen. You must appreciate the importance of this. Just as a horse must have endurance and no defects, so it is with weapons. Horses should walk strongly, and swords and companion swords should cut strongly. Spears and halberds must stand up to heavy use. Bows and guns must be sturdy. Weapons should be hardy rather than decorative. You should not have a favorite weapon. To become overfamiliar with one weapon is as much a fault as not knowing it sufficiently well. You should not copy others, but use weapons which you can handle properly. It is bad for commanders and troopers to have likes and dislikes. These are things you must learn thoroughly. There is timing in everything. Timing and strategy cannot be mastered without a great deal of practice. Timing is important in dancing or pipe or string music, for they are in rhythm only if the timing is good. Timing and rhythm are also involved in the military arts, shooting bows and guns and riding horses. In all skills and abilities, there is timing. There is also timing in the void. There is timing in the whole life of the warrior, in his thriving and declining, in his harmony and discord. Similarly, There is timing in the way of the merchant, in the rise and fall of capital. All things entail rising and falling timing. You must be able to discern this. In strategy, there are various timing considerations. From the outset, you must know the applicable timing and the inapplicable timing, and from among the large and the small things, and from the fast and slow timings, find the relevant timing. First, seeing the distance timing and the background timing. This is the main thing in strategy. It is especially important to know the background timing. Otherwise, your strategy will become uncertain. You win battles with the timing and the void, born of the timing of cunning, by knowing the enemy's timing, and thus using a timing which the enemy does not expect. All the five books are chiefly concerned with timing. You must train sufficiently to appreciate this. If you practice day and night in the above Ichi school strategy, your spirit will naturally broaden. Thus, large-scale strategy and the strategy of hand-to-hand combat propagated in the world. This is recorded for the first time in the five books of ground, water, fire, wind, and void. This is the way for men who want to learn my strategy. 1. Do not think dishonestly. 2. The way is in training. 3. Become acquainted with every part. 4. Know the ways of all professions. 5. Distinguish between gain and loss in worldly matters. 6. Develop intuitive judgment and understanding for everything. 7. Perceive those things which cannot be seen. 8. Pay attention even to trifles. 9. Do nothing which is of no use. It is important to start by setting those broad principles in your heart and train in the way of strategy. If you do not look at things on a large scale, it will be difficult for you to master strategy. If you learn and attain the strategy, you will never lose even to 20 or 30 enemies. More than anything, to start with, you must set your heart on strategy and earnestly stick to the way. You will come to be able to actually beat men in fights and to be able to train and win with your eye. Also, by training, you'll be able to freely command your own body, conquer men with your body, and with sufficient training, you will be able to beat 10 men with your spirit. When you have reached this point, will it not mean that you are invincible? Moreover, in the large scale strategy, the superior man will manage many support dexterously, bear himself correctly, govern the country, and foster the people, thus persevering the ruler's discipline. If there is a way involving the spirit of not being defeated, to help oneself and gain honor, it is the way of strategy. The Book of Water. The spirit of Ni Ten Ichi school of strategy is based on water, and this water book explains methods of victory, such as the long sword form of the Ichi school. Language does not expend to explaining the way in detail, but it can be grasped intuitively. Study this book, read a word, and then ponder on it. If you interpret the meaning loosely, you will mistake the way. The principles of strategy are written down here in terms of single combat, but you must think broadly so that you attain an understanding for 10,000 aside battles. Strategy is different from other things in that if you mistake the way even a little, you will become bewildered and fall into bad ways. If you merely read this book, you will not reach the way of strategy. Absorb the things written in this book. Do not just read, memorize, or imitate, but so that you realize the principle from within your own heart. Study hard to absorb these things into your body. In strategy, your spiritual bearing must not be any different from normal. Both in fighting and in everyday life, you should be determined and calm. Meet the situation without tenseness and yet not recklessly. Your spirit settled yet unbiased. Even when your spirit is calm, do not let your body relax. And when your body is relaxed, do not let your spirit slacken. Do not let your spirit be influenced by your body, or your body be influenced by your spirit. Be neither insufficiently spirited nor overspirited. An elevated spirit is weak, and a low spirit is weak. Do not let the enemy see your spirit. Small people must be completely familiar with the spirit of large people, and large people must be familiar with the spirit of small people. Whatever your size, do not be misled by the reactions of your own body. With your spirit open and unconstricted, look at things from a high point of view. You must cultivate your wisdom and spirit. Polish your wisdom. Learn public justice. Distinguish between good and evil. Study the ways of different arts one by one. When you cannot be deceived by men, you will have realized the wisdom of strategy. The wisdom of strategy is different from other things. On the battlefield, even when you are hard pressed, you should ceaselessly research the principles of strategy so that you can develop a ready spirit. Adopt a stance with the head erect, neither hanging down nor looking up nor twisted. Your forehead and the space between your eyes should not be wrinkled. Do not roll your eyes, nor allow them to blink, but slightly narrow them. With your features composed, keep the line of your nose straight with a feeling of slightly flaring your nostrils. Hold the line of the rear of the neck straight. Instill vigor into your hairline, and in the same way from the shoulders down through your entire body. Lower both shoulders and without the buttocks jutting out. Put strength into your legs from the knees to the tips of your toes. Brace your abdomen so that you do not bend at the hips. Wedge your companion sword in your belt against your abdomen so that your belt is not slack. This is called wedging in. In all forms of strategy, it is necessary to maintain the combat stance in everyday life and to make your everyday stance your combat stance. You must research this well. The gaze should be large and broad. This is the twofold gaze, perception and sight. Perception is strong and sight weak. In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close and to take a distance view of close things. It is important in strategy to know the enemy's sword and not be distracted by insignificant movements of his sword. You must study this. The gaze is the same for single combat and for large-scale strategy. It is necessary in strategy to be able to look to both sides without moving the eyeballs. You cannot master this ability quickly. Learn what is written here. Use the gaze in everyday life, and do not vary it, whatever happens. Grip the sword with a rather floating feeling in your thumb and forefinger, with the middle finger neither tight nor slack, and with the last two fingers tight. It is bad to have play in your hands. When you take up a sword, you must feel intent on cutting the enemy. As you cut an enemy, you must not change your grip, and your hands must not cower. When you dash the enemy's sword aside, or ward it off, or force it down, you must slightly change the feeling in your thumb and forefinger. Above all, you must be intent on cutting the enemy the way you grip your sword. The grip for combat and for sword testing is the same. There is no such thing as a man-cutting grip. Generally, I dislike fixedness in both long swords and hands. Fixedness means a dead hand. Pliability is a living hand. You must bear this in mind. With the tips of your toes somewhat floating, tread firmly with your heels. Whether you move fast or slow, with large or small steps, your feet must always move as in normal walking. I dislike the three walking methods, known as jumping foot, floating foot, and fixed steps. So-called yin-yang foot is important in the way. Yin-yang foot means not moving only one foot. It means moving your feet left to right and right to left when cutting, withdrawing, or warding off a cut. You should not move on one foot preferentially. There are 5 attitudes. The 5 attitudes are upper, middle, lower, right side, and left side. These are the give. Although the attitude has these 5 divisions, the one purpose of all of them is to cut the enemy. There are none but these 5 attitudes. Whatever attitude you are in, do not be conscious of making the attitude. Think only of cutting. Your attitude should be large or small according to the situation. Upper, lower, and middle attitudes are decisive. Left side and right side attitudes are fluid. Left and right attitude should be used if there is an obstruction overhead or to one side. The decision to use left or right depends on the place. The essence of the way is this. To understand attitude, you must thoroughly understand the middle attitude. The middle attitude is the heart of attitudes. If you look at the strategy on a broad scale, the middle attitude is the seat of the commander, with the other 4 attitudes following the commander. You must appreciate this. Knowing the way of the longsword means we can wield with 2 fingers the sword we usually carry. If we know the path of the sword well, we can wield it easily. If you try to make the longsword quickly, you will mistake the way. To wield the longsword well, you must wield it calmly. If you try to wield it quickly, like a folding fan or a short sword, you will err by using short sword chopping. You cannot cut down a man with a long sword using this method. When you have cut downwards with the long sword, lift it straight upwards. When you cut sideways, return the sword along a sideways path. Return the sword in a reasonable way, always stretching the elbows broadly. Wield the sword strongly. This is the way of the long sword. If you learn to use the 5 approaches of my strategy, you will be able to wield the sword well. You must train constantly. The first approach of the 5 approaches is the middle attitude. Confront the enemy with the point of your sword against his face. When he attacks, dash his sword to the right and ride it. Or, when the enemy attacks, deflect the point of his sword by hitting downwards. Keep your longsword where it is, and as the enemy renews his attack, cut his arms from below. This is the first method. The 5 approaches are this kind of thing. You must train repeatedly using a longsword in order to learn them. When you master any way of the longsword, you'll be able to control any attack the enemy makes. I assure you, there are no attitudes than the 5 attitudes of the longsword of Nito. In the second approach with the longsword, from the upper attitude, cut the enemy just as he attacks. If the enemy evades the cut, keep your sword where it is and, scooping up from below, cut him as he renews the attack. It is impossible to repeat the cut from there. In this method, there are various changes in timing and spirit. You will be able to understand this by training the Ichi school. You will always win with the 5 longsword methods. You must train it repetitively. In the third approach, adopt the lower attitude, anticipating and scooping up. When the enemy attacks, hit his hands from below. As you do, he may try to hit your sword down. If this is the case, cut his upper arms horizontally with a feeling of crossing. This means that from the lower attitudes, you hit the enemy at the instant he attacks. You will encounter this method often, both as a beginner and later strategy. You must train holding a long sword. In the fourth approach, adopt the left side attitude. As the enemy attacks, hit his hands from below. If you hit as his hands as he attempts to dash down your sword, with the feeling of hitting his hands, parry the path of his sword and cut across from above your shoulder. This is the way of the longsword. Though this method, you win by parrying the line of the enemy's attack. You must research this. In the fifth approach, the sword is in the right side attitude. In accordance with the enemy's attack, cross your long sword from below at the side of the upper attitude, then cut straight from above. This method is essential for knowing the way the long sword fell. If you can use this method, you can freely wield a heavy long sword. I could not describe in detail how to use these 5 approaches. You must become well acquainted with my In Harmony with the Longsword way. Learn large-scale timing, understand the enemy's longsword, and become used to the 5 approaches from the outset. You will always win by using these 5 methods, with various training and timing considerations discerning the enemy's spirit. You must consider this all carefully. The attitude, no attitude teaching. Attitude, no attitude means that there is no need for what are known as longsword attitudes. Even so, attitudes exist as the 5 ways of holding the long sword. However, if you hold the sword, it must be in such a way that it is easy to cut the enemy well, in accordance with the situation, the place, and your relation to the enemy. From the upper attitude, as your spirit lessens, you can adopt the middle attitude. And from the middle attitude, you can raise the sword a little in your technique and adopt the upper attitude. From the lower attitude, you can raise the sword and adopt the middle attitudes as the occasion demands. According to the situation, if you turn your sword from either the left side or the right side attitude and towards the center, the middle or the lower attitude results. The principle of this is called existing attitude, non-existing attitude. The primary thing when you take a sword in your hands is your intention to cut the enemy, whatever the means. Whenever you parry, hit, spring, strike, or touch the enemy's cutting sword, you must cut the enemy in the same movement. It is essential to attain this. If you think only of hitting, springing, striking, or touching the enemy, you will not be able to actually cut him. More than anything, you must be thinking of carrying your movement through to cutting him. You must thoroughly research this. Attitude and strategy on a larger scale is called battle array. Such attitudes are all for winning battles. Fixed formation is bad. Study this well. To hit the enemy in one timing. In one timing means when you have closed the enemy to hit him as quickly and directly as possible, without moving your body or settling your spirit, while you see that he is still undecided. The timing of hitting before the enemy decides to withdraw, break, or hit is this in one timing. You must train to achieve this timing to be able to hit in the timing of an instant. The abdomen timing of 2. When you attack the enemy, quickly retreats. As you see him tense, you must feint a cut. Then as he relaxes, follow up and hit him. This is the abdomen timing of 2. It is very difficult to attain this by merely reading this book, but you will soon understand it with a little instruction. No design, no conception. In this method, when the enemy attacks and you also decide to attack, hit with your body, and hit with your spirit, and hit from the void with your hands, accelerating strongly. This is the no design and no conception cut. This is the most important method of hitting. It is often used. You must train hard to understand it. The flowing water cut. The flowing water cut is used when you are struggling blade to blade with the enemy. When he breaks, quickly and withdraws, trying to spring with his long sword. Extend your body and spirit and cut him as slowly as possible with your long sword, following your body like stagnant water. You can cut with certainty if you learn this. You must discern the enemy's grade. Continuous cut. When you attack the enemy, and the enemy also attacks, and your swords spring together, in one action cut his head, hands, and legs. When you cut several places with one sweep of a long sword, it is a continuous cut. You must practice this cut. It is often used. With detailed practice, you should be able to understand it. The fire and stones. Cut the fire and stones cut means that when the enemy's long sword and your long sword clash together as strongly as possible without raising the sword even a little, this means cutting quickly with the hands, the body, the legs, all three cutting strongly. If you train well enough, you will be able to strike strongly. The red leaves cut. The red leaves cut is an allusion to falling, dying leaves, means knocking down the enemy's long sword. The spirit should be getting control of his sword. When the enemy is in a long sword attitude in front of you and intent on cutting, hitting, and parrying, you strongly hit the enemy's long sword with a fire and stones cut, perhaps in the spirit of the no design and no conception cut. If you then beat down the point of his sword with a sticky feeling, he will necessarily drop the sword. If you practice this cut, it becomes easy to make the enemy drop his sword. You must train repetitively. The body in place of the long sword. Also, the long sword in place of the body. Usually, we move the body and the sword at the same time to cut the enemy. However, according to the enemy's cutting method, you can dash against him with your bodies first, and afterwards cut with the sword. If his body is immovable, you can cut first with the long sword, but generally, you hit first with the body, and then cut with the long sword. You must research this well and practice hitting. Cut and slash. To cut and to slash are two different things. Cutting, whatever form of cutting it is decisive with a resolute spirit. Slashing is nothing more than touching the enemy. Even if you slash strongly, and even if the enemy dies instantly, it is slashing. When you cut, your spirit is resolved. You must appreciate this. First, if you slash at the enemy's hands or legs, you must then cut strongly. Slashing is in the spirit and the same as touching. When you realize this, they become indistinguishable. Learn this well. Chinese monkey's body. The Chinese monkey's body is the spirit of not stretching out your arms. The spirit is to get in quickly without in the least extending your arms before the enemy cuts. If you are intent upon not stretching out your arms, you are effectively far away. The spirit is to go in with your whole body. When you come within arm's reach, it becomes easy to move your body in. You must research this well. Glue and locker emulsion body. The spirit of the glue and locker emulsion body is to stick to the enemy and not separate from him. When you approach the enemy, stick firmly with your head, body, and legs. People tend to advance their head and legs quickly, while their body lags behind. You should stick firmly so that there is not the slightest gap between the enemy's body and your body. You must consider this carefully. To strive for height. To strive for height is meant when you close with the enemy, strive with him for superior height without cringing. Stretch your legs, stretch your hips, and stretch your neck to face with him. When you think you have won and you are higher, thrust in strongly. You must learn this. To apply stickiness. When the enemy attacks, and you also attack with the long sword, you should go in with a sticky feeling and fix your longsword against the enemies as you receive his cut. The spirit of stickiness is not hitting very strongly, but hitting so that the swords do not separate easily. It is best to approach as calmly as possible when hitting the enemy's longsword with stickiness. The difference between stickiness and entanglement is that stickiness is firm and entanglement is weak. You must appreciate this. The body strike. The body strike means to approach the enemy through a gap in his guard. The spirit is to strike him with your body. Then, turn your face a little aside and strike the enemy's breast with your left shoulder and thrust out. Approach with the spirit of bouncing the enemy away, striking as strongly as possible in time with your breathing. If you achieve this method of closing with the enemy, you'll be able to knock him 10 or 20 feet away. It is possible to strike the enemy until he is dead. Train well. And for this video, that's going to be all I'm going to read. I'm going to read probably the rest in the next video tomorrow. Sorry about the inconsistent audio quality. It's my first time doing this. I accidentally recorded through Bluetooth headphones, but I'm trying my best. Well, thanks for watching. The video still got a little bit more. Enjoy the rest. That hurt. I'm pretty tired. I don't have anything else to say. Hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Subscribe. We're all gonna make it. Have courage.